guys, welcome back to my channel. So obviously it's been quite a while. I had a baby, so if you don't follow me on Instagram, I'll have my handle up here for you guys. I had my baby actually it's exactly 6 weeks today. So I'm 6 weeks postpartum, and I wanted to sit down and share my birth story with you guys because ever since I announced him on Instagram and shared all his pictures and stuff, I've gotten so many DMs to film my birth story as well as just an update on my postpartum recovery and how everything is going, as well as an update on the baby. So today's video is going to be a little bit different. I didn't want to just sit down and talk about my birth story and have nothing else going on. I feel like birth stories can get pretty long, even though fortunately for me, my labor and delivery was very quick. So I feel like my story won't be that long, but who knows. So instead of sitting here and staring at my face for however long it's gonna take and listening to my birth story, I figured I would show you a quick makeup look that I wear if I'm wearing makeup at all. So obviously we're quarantining, and with a newborn, you can't really go anywhere. So I haven't really left the house, but on the occasion that like I go run errands or something and I just want to feel a little bit more like myself and a little bit less of a zombie mom, I do like to throw on a little bit of makeup. Most of the time it's really not all of these products because you just don't have time for a full face of makeup. It'll be just like a tinted moisturizer, some concealer, and maybe a little bit of blush. See, this video is already getting way too long, so let me just get started. I'm just gonna pin my hair back because I know it's going to drive me crazy throughout this whole video. I do have everything that I want to talk about down in my notes because again, it's been 6 weeks, so I didn't want to forget any details. The only negative thing about my birth story is that I wasn't able to vlog the whole birthing experience. That's the only part I'm bummed out about. We tried to set up a camera. First off, the doctor or whoever she was told us that we couldn't, but I feel like if we set it up, nobody would have said anything because she wasn't even there. I think she was just trying to follow protocol and guidelines. I think she was new, so she had to say no just to cover herself. But that's the only thing I regret out of my whole experience, is that I wasn't able to vlog or even record him coming into the world and exiting my body. But everything else was just amazing. So I guess I'll start off that Friday. I'm also just gonna start priming my face. I have nothing else on my face right now. I didn't even have time to moisturize. So I'm just gonna use the Tatcha Silk Canvas as my primer and my moisturizer. So yeah, so that Friday, February 5th, you saw in my previous video where I vlogged my last week of pregnancy. I went to my last prenatal appointment, and I'll have the video linked down below so that it goes into more detail. But basically at my last prenatal appointment, she told me that she could see something leaking and she wasn't sure if it was amniotic fluid or if it was me peeing myself or if it was the gel that she was using for the cervical exam. So she wanted me to go to labor and delivery, get everything checked out. Long story short, I went to labor and delivery for 2 hours, got my ultrasound done, and all my fluids were fine, so they discharged me. And she told me that I was already 1 centimeter dilated. Saturday comes around, it was a very normal day. I've been having what I thought was more Braxton Hicks, but in the end, I realized I was in actual early labor, like those were actual contractions. And because it didn't hurt and it didn't last long, I just kind of thought it was Braxton Hicks and had no idea that I was actually in early labor. I'm just gonna spray a little bit of the Wet n Wild Photo Focus 3-in-1 primer water. I love this stuff. So yeah, Saturday, I just inhaled that. Saturday rolled around and I was in early labor, didn't know it. And like all morning I kept stopping to like catch my breath or breathe and taking deep breaths. And my sister Kathy was like, "Are you having contractions? Like, it feels like you're having contractions." And I was like, "No, they're just Braxton Hicks. It just feels really tight and then it goes away." And she kept looking at me like all morning. She's like, "I feel like you're in labor or you're having real contractions." And I was like, "Oh, whatever. If I am, then it's not really starting yet." So yeah, that was all Saturday. That Saturday we were actually planning to move to our new house. So again, in the previous video, I talked about how we were living at my sister's for a full month actually. And that Saturday, February 6th, we were supposed to move into our new house because everything upstairs and all the living rooms and living areas were ready to move in and we can settle in and stuff before the baby got here. Little did I know that would not have happened. So all Saturday we spent the day at the new house cleaning, moving the furniture to where they should be. I'm using the Laura Mercier Tinted Moisturizer. This is in the shade 2W1 Natural. So we were really just trying to get everything ready so we can move in later that day or later that night. And in the middle of it, my brother called and said he was coming home because my due date was February 9th and he wanted to be here obviously for it. So he said, I'm just gonna come home. I work from home anyways. If anything, I'll just work from mom and dad's, and if you have the baby, I can be here when he's here. And I just thought it was really sweet. So he said he was gonna come home Saturday. Since he was gonna be home, we were all gonna hang out anyway. So I said to my husband, you know, instead of moving in tonight, let's just stay at Kathy's for one more night so we can all be there, hang out with Donnie, my brother, and just hang out one more time before we move out of Kathy's. So we packed up like a night bag because we literally brought all our stuff and all our clothes that was at Kathy's to the new house thinking we were gonna start living there that Saturday. So we packed like an overnight bag just to move back to Kathy's, and we just spent the night eating and we just hung out, and it was a really like, I'm glad we had that night because it was such a fun, relaxing night with my siblings. So like around 10 o'clock, my nieces, who's obsessed with the Nintendo Switch, we got them the Just Dance game, and it's so fun. I've shown it on my Instagram stories before, them dancing to it, and it's hilarious. It's like a comedy show watching them dance to it. But yeah, they pulled out that game. We were just hanging around watching them dance. Donnie started to dance with them. I was like, you know what? I want to dance too. So at 9 months pregnant, I got up and danced my ass off, and it was the funniest thing ever. It was just such a fun night. And around midnight, like right after we stopped dancing, I started having real contractions. And I knew they were real because earlier that day I asked Kathy, like, what's the difference in your experience between a Braxton Hicks and a real contraction? And she says, a real contraction feels like a cramp, and it also spreads to your back. And that stuck with me all day. And once the first contraction hit, I said, that was a real contraction, because I felt it in my back and it felt like a period cramp. So when that first contraction hit and it felt like a real contraction, I was like, guys, I think I'm in labor. So literally at midnight, I think it was a few minutes before midnight, contractions started. So we started to time it. I downloaded the app. We timed how far apart they were, how long they lasted. I'm gonna do some concealer because I desperately need some. Being a mother of a newborn, you don't really get sleep, although he's a good sleeper during the night. He only wakes up once or twice, maybe 3 times to feed and for me to change him. But still, the dark circles are like no joke these days. So where was I? Yeah, we were timing the contractions. They were like, I think 8 to 10 minutes apart. Didn't really last long, so I knew it wasn't anything real that we had to rush to the hospital or call the doctor or anything. So I went to bed that night, still having those contractions, and all throughout the night, the contractions got stronger, and it actually woke me up every time a contraction hit. Like, I would be sleeping, I would wake up because it was just really tight, and I felt the cramping in my back. So all night, all throughout the night, I felt the contractions. So I definitely knew I was in labor. So just to brighten up that area, I'm going to use the Rare Beauty concealer in the shade 190W. I'm just going to do a tiny dot of this. So I woke up at, I think 8 or 9 o'clock that morning to go shower, and I'm so glad I did. So I showered, I woke my husband up, and I said, let's go to the new house and just really finish getting things done so that if he comes today, tomorrow, the next day, at least we'll be able to just move right in right after the hospital. And I'm glad we did, because that's exactly what happened. So we went to the new house, I put up curtains, and I was still having contractions and they were getting stronger, But my stubborn ass didn't want to just sit around and watch people work and do stuff for me. So I'm literally climbing my bed, putting up curtains, putting up curtain rods while I'm having contractions at 9 months pregnant, almost 40 weeks basically. I was in my 39th week. I was 39 weeks and 5 days. I wouldn't recommend hanging curtains when you're that far along in your pregnancy, but it was fine. So my husband and my brother worked on the stuff that needed to be done downstairs. I was upstairs in our bedroom getting things kind of situated, organizing, and getting things just, you know, clean and ready. And I'm glad that I did, because I was able to deep clean our bedroom, like basically the whole upstairs and his nursery. So I felt really good about the upstairs being completely clean and ready to move in. So then like around 11, I think it was 11:30, Kathy called and said, hey, do you want to have some breakfast? I said, yeah, let's do that. We're all gonna be hungry soon anyways. I'm gonna set my face with the Maybelline Fit Me Matte and Poreless powder. So we ordered breakfast, we picked it up, and we brought it back to Kathy's to eat. And it was the perfect like last meal for me, because the place that we get breakfast foods at is just so good. And we got so much food. We had breakfast together and it was really, really nice. And at breakfast is when the contractions started to get really bad, where I literally had to stop, concentrate on it, and breathe through them because they were starting to get painful. I would say they were at a 5 or a 6 from 1 to 10. The intensity was getting there. I could still talk through the contractions, and that's how I knew I didn't have to rush to the hospital just yet. Yeah, I just had to concentrate and breathe through the contraction, and they were getting closer because we were obviously timing them. And around, I think 1:30, they started to get even more intense and closer together. So Kathy was like, you need to call the doctors. That was Sunday, February 7th, and obviously my doctor's office is closed. So I called their answering service and I told them, you know, my contractions are about 3 to 5 minutes apart and they're lasting between 30 seconds to a minute. And she says, that's perfect. Come on into labor and delivery. Let's see what's going on. We'll have you check out. So they wanted me to go to the hospital. So for bronzer, I'm going to use my Laura Mercier Matte Radiance Baked Powder in the shade Bronze 03. So yeah, around 1:30, again, Kathy has the footage, so I'll ask her for it. But I started to get ready. I put on makeup. I straightened my hair because, again, I didn't want to go in and be there like for days, God forbid, and just, I don't know, not feel myself. I just wanted to feel as pretty and as clean and put together as possible, so that if I'm just hanging around for 3 days, I at least have my hair straightened and my makeup on. So I did my makeup through my contractions. I literally like was putting on foundation, had to stop, get on all fours and breathe through the contraction, and then go back to applying concealer. And it was extra, but that's me. Around 1:30, we started to pack up and leave. The contractions, I keep saying they kept getting worse because my labor went really, really fast. So every time I say it kept getting worse, I could feel it getting more intense. It really was getting worse and getting more intense. So even from like breakfast to the time that we drove to the hospital, which was only like an hour and a half in between that time, my contractions were like getting from a 5 to a 6 to now like a 7 or an 8. So the drive to the hospital was not comfortable. So when we got to the hospital, they admitted us, they checked me, and I was already 3 centimeters dilated, and I think she said 80 or 90% effaced. She kept saying 3 and 9. I think that's what I'm remembering. I'll double check with my husband, but I was like pretty far along already for just getting admitted. She said you came in exactly when you needed to come in. 3 centimeters is perfect to come in because you already did most of the early laboring at home. You were comfortable, you were able to eat and shower. So I was pretty proud of us for getting the laboring part down and getting it right. I'm just gonna use the NARS liquid blush in the shade Torrid. They admitted me, they took me to my labor and delivery room. We got kind of settled in. And I mean, as soon as we settled into our labor and delivery room, the contractions hit like crazy. It was getting to be a really, really high 8, almost 9. And like it was to the point where I couldn't talk through the contractions anymore. I had to really like get on my knees and get through the contractions. They gave me a yoga ball, which sort of helped, but after like 10 minutes on it, I was just like, this is not helping. I had to stand and bend over to breathe, and my husband was trying to rub my back, and I think at one point I was just like, don't touch me, because it was just getting so bad that anything distracting me from concentrating on breathing through it was making it worse. So him touching like my back, rubbing it, took my focus off of breathing through the contraction. My tip for you is whatever you need to do to concentrate on the contraction and breathing through it, do it. If you need water, if you need to be on your back, if you need to be in a certain position, if you need the rubbing, if you don't need the rubbing, you need to focus only on the contraction, because anything else is going to distract you and make that pain even worse. So around 5 o'clock, they checked me again, and they told me I was 7 centimeters dilated. Like, I'm telling you, my labor went by so quick. So from 2 o'clock when I got admitted to 5 o'clock, I had already dilated 4 centimeters, which is crazy. And that's why my pain and my contraction intensity progressed so quickly, because I was dilating so quickly, which is great because I didn't want to be at the hospital for 3 days dilating and laboring and having these crazy contractions. But it was really painful. Like, the pain got intense really fast. So when I was at 7 centimeters dilated, they asked me, what do you want to do for your pain management? Do you want an epidural? Do you want to go natural? And all along throughout my whole pregnancy, I wanted, and I was determined to go as natural as possible. I said, if I can get through the contractions without an epidural, I would like to not get the epidural. And I told the doctor that. But then like maybe 20 minutes later, the contractions were so bad. I was moaning and groaning. I made sounds that I've never made before. My poor husband had to like hear sounds that probably should have came from a dying animal somewhere, coming from his wife. And at that point, I was like, I think I need something. Not an epidural, but something just to take the edge off and to just make it a little bit less intense. I could deal with the pain, but it was getting to be so bad that like I wanted something to make me stop groaning like a dying bear. So I asked the doctor like what I can have, and she said, you can have some morphine, it'll take the edge off. Obviously it's not going to take the pain away. And I said, perfect, stop right there, let's do morphine. So she went and put in the order for morphine and came back and started my IV drip and the morphine. And they also put me on penicillin, because if you've been following my pregnancy journey, I think I mentioned it, yeah, I definitely have, I failed my B-strep test. So I was B-strep positive, and to protect the baby when he's coming out, they put me on antibiotics, which was the penicillin. So they hooked up the penicillin, they hooked up the morphine, and things got a little bit better. The morphine definitely helped take the edge off, but it made me really sleepy. The only like traumatic part of my birth story is the morphine and the effects that it like caused for me personally. I don't know how it's gonna be with everyone else, so don't take my story as like, you know, set in stone what's exactly gonna happen if you choose morphine. But the morphine made me fall asleep. That means I was falling asleep and waking up to a pain at the intensity of a 9/10. So my contractions was obviously progressing really fast. So with the morphine, I kept falling asleep like into a nice good sleep where I couldn't hear the beeping of the IV machines. I couldn't hear the nurses talking, and they were talking like normal voices, sometimes even loud. I couldn't even hear them. So the morphine definitely knocked me out, but that meant I kept waking up to really bad contractions, and that was what was the most traumatic. Just imagine like having a good sleep and waking up every minute to this excruciating pain. And I think that's when my husband got really scared. He was like, I never want to see you in that pain again. I'm not even sure if I want to have a second kid because of what I witnessed you going through. So from 7 centimeters to 9 or 10, whatever I was at when I finally got to push, the contractions were so bad, like excruciatingly bad. I woke up screaming, like not just groaning at this point, I was screaming, and I felt so bad after everything had, like after the baby came. I thought back on it, I was like, oh my god, these poor women to like the left and right of me, and the poor nurses at the nurses station had to listen to me scream. I definitely did not hold back. I was cursing, not like vulgarly cursing, but I was just like, oh that hurts, Like just randomly a curse word would slip out. My poor nurse, she kept saying, stop screaming, it's not gonna help, blow out the candle. She wanted me to breathe. And when I did breathe, it did help, but when you're in that much pain, you can't remember to keep breathing. You just literally want to emit any noise and grab onto anything as aggressively as possible to help you get through that contraction. But she kept telling me, stop screaming, don't talk, blow out the candle, blow out the candle. And towards like the very end of my contractions, I told her like, I need to push. I'm like, please let me push, something is wrong. And she kept telling me, no, 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 don't push, that's not good, don't push, breathe through it, blow out the candle. And I kept telling her, no, I have to push. The contractions went from just extremely painful, like the worst period cramps of my life, to what felt like an alien was trying to crawl out of my butthole. I didn't feel the pain in my front anymore or down by my vagina where the baby was gonna exit. I felt it all like in my back and down by like my butthole. Like it literally felt like he was clawing out of my butt. Every time a contraction hit, it felt like I had to take a massive poop. And that's exactly what like contractions felt like towards the end for me. Like I just had to take a poop and they're telling me I can't. And towards the end, I kept telling her like, I'm gonna push. And I tried to push and it felt so good to relieve that pressure by pushing, even though the baby wasn't coming out. But it just felt so good to be able to just push down on the contraction and relieve some of that pressure off of my butthole. I think I've said butthole like 16 times already. That's really, really ladylike, Lawn. My contractions were getting so close. I don't think I even got a minute in between them. Like they were getting so bad. It was like every 30 seconds, it was another wave of excruciating pain and butthole pressure and just needing to push. So at one point I woke up and the doctor was in the room and I was like, thank Lord, because I think it's time. Like they're actually letting me push. It happened so fast. The doctor walked in, they started prepping their stations, putting like the sheets down around me. They told me to scoot myself up in bed, like we were gonna push. So from 5 o'clock to 7 o'clock, I dilated the rest that I needed to. So I think I was at 9 or 10 when we started pushing. And when pushing started, it just felt so, so good. Thank God for me. I think it lasted maybe like 5 minutes. It was really exhausting, but it just felt so good to be able to concentrate on another thing that's not my contraction. So every time a contraction hit, I would scream like, I'm pushing, it's happening. And they were like, just do it, push. And they would count to 10 and I would push 3 times and that would be 1 set. On my 4th set, he came out. I'm telling you, my labor and delivery was so fast and I'm so glad it happened that way. As painful as it was because my labor progressed so quickly, I'm glad that it took me literally 5 hours from getting to the hospital to the time that he was born. So at 7:44, we had our baby boy and I still get chills thinking about it. And I remember it so clearly still. I feel like it's something a mother will never forget. I pushed and I didn't even feel anything down there, to be honest. I felt nothing tearing. I didn't feel his head crowning. I didn't feel his head or his body come out. It was just this immense relief and pressure taken off. And they literally just plopped him on my stomach. And I looked at my husband and he was like crying. I was crying. We looked down at the baby and he was just so, so perfect. And he had his eyes opened and I just looked into them and it was just, that was the most perfect moment I will ever have. Yeah, so he came out and we were just staring at him and we were just, we fell in love. It was literally love at first sight with this kid.
Oh, good. He's so cute.
Hello. Look at your squishy face. Go fight it all day.
Mm-hmm.
Come fight it all day.
He didn't cry, he made noises and nobody was freaking out about it. And I know some babies don't come out like screaming, crying. He did like this little wail and then he stopped and he's just a quiet baby. He only cries when he really like desperately needs something, like he's hungry, he's sleepy, he needs to be changed. Otherwise, he's a pretty chill baby. So they put him on me immediately and without even me saying anything, my hospital is definitely pro golden hour and pro breastfeeding, so they really wanted the bonding time with the mom to start immediately. So they put him on me and they just let me hold him for a full hour, and that was really important to me because had they not offered me that golden hour, I would have asked for it to just leave us alone for an hour. All the tests and all the other stuff can get done later on. So he was on my chest for a full hour and my husband got to cut the umbilical cord, Thank goodness we do have some pictures of it. The nurse was kind enough to say, do you want me to take a picture of it for you? And we said, yes, please. So he got to cut the umbilical cord, and that was really cool. And yeah, we just hung out for an hour while they were sewing me up down there. Yes, I did tear. The doctor said, you tore yourself up. Honestly, you're so caught up in the moment, your adrenaline is so high, and you're just so in love with this brand new human on you that you think of nothing else. Like, I forgot they were even working down by my vagina. I just didn't care what was happening. They were sticking me with things, they were sewing me up, numbing me up down there, and I would only like remember that they were working on my vagina when it like hurts. I felt the poking and the sewing and stuff, but otherwise I did not notice anything else but this beautiful little boy in my arms. So they worked on me, we held the baby, and the nurse let me breastfeed him, which was amazing. He latched right away, and she like squeezed down on my boob, and like all this collagen came out, and she's like, oh my god, that's perfect, you're creating so much already, this is amazing, so let's just get him on and let's get him fed. So he fed for like, I think 10 to 15 minutes. He latched right away. It was so amazing and beautiful, and it sounds so cliche and corny and cheesy, but everything they say about like breastfeeding and bonding with your baby is true. Like, the first time you breastfeed your baby is a moment you'll never forget. All throughout my pregnancy, I was worried that I wasn't going to be producing milk, enough milk for him, or he wasn't going to be able to latch, and breastfeeding was going to be a struggle. So I was really happy that he was able to latch and feed right away. So that's what we did. And then after an hour or so, they were like, all right, mama, we're gonna take the baby and we're gonna start doing the test that we need to do. So he needed to be weighed and measured because he hasn't even gotten that part done. They literally plopped him on me and let me hold him for a full hour. They did everything in the room. So they took him off me, they weighed him, they measured him. He weighed 5 pounds 11 ounces, which is tiny. It made me a little bit afraid that he was so small, because all throughout the pregnancy we thought he was going to be like a chunky monkey coming out. He was going to be like 8 or 9 pounds because of how big I was, and to hear that he was only 5 pounds 11 ounces made me a little nervous. I was like, is he okay? Is that too little? They're like, it's fine, some babies are just born small, he's perfectly healthy. He measured at 18.5 inches, so he's just a little guy. Everything else was great. His APGAR test came back great. He was perfect, he was healthy, and it just felt so good to hear that he, like in the outside world, was healthy. They also took some blood to do his blood sugar, his glucose test, because if you remembered, I failed my 1 hour glucose test but passed my 3 hour one. So they said because he failed the first one, we just want to keep a closer eye on his sugars. So they did his sugars and it came back good. So after they ran all their tests, they gave the baby back to us. They handed him to daddy. So my husband got to hold him, and I did get that on video, which was really special to see my husband holding the baby for the first time. So he got to hold him for a little bit, and the nurse told me, okay, so we're going to get up and we're going to try to pee, and I'm going to show you how to clean yourself down there, and we're going to take you to your recovery room. So everything moved pretty quickly after like golden hour stopped. It wasn't as bad as I thought. I really, besides the whole birthing thing, my recovery process was something I was really nervous about. I didn't know how painful it was going to be to pee. I was really nervous about the first pee, and because I tore myself up down there, obviously I have stitches down there, so I was just really afraid my first pee was going to be like as bad as birthing was. So I got up. Getting up was fine. It just felt really tight down there. Didn't really hurt. I don't think I was on any pain medicine. I think the morphine was still in me. I sat down to pee, and I don't remember much about my first pee, which might be a good thing. I don't think it hurt so bad. It stung obviously a little bit, like a little bit of stinging, and then the rest was fine. And then she gave me my peri bottle, and look, if you're like a prude, if you're very modest and shy about your body, about being naked, that's gonna go out the window when you have your baby, because everyone's looking at your vagina, your boobs are out, you're basically naked for the whole like unit to see. It doesn't stop after you give birth either. It might actually get worse after birth. So she lifted my gown, squirted the peri bottle down there for me. She's like, you gotta clean front and back, this is how you do it. And then she's like, you gotta pat dry, don't rub. And she showed me how to prepare the gigantic pad that was gonna go in my new very, very sexy mesh underwear. And that was it. She told me to sit in the wheelchair. She was gonna wheel me over to the recovery unit where I'm going to spend the rest of my hospital stay. I sat in the wheelchair, my husband packed up the stuff. He gave me the baby so I could hold the baby on the way over there while he packed up the room and all our bags. Thankfully, we didn't have anything unpacked. I think the only thing we unpacked was our coconut water. I bought like a giant box of 6 coconut waters and I was drinking that through my labor. But like we didn't have time to unpack our clothes, toiletries, anything because my labor was so fast and I couldn't concentrate on anything but my contractions. So he just really picked up all the bags and we wheeled over to our new room and that was it. We settled into the new room. I really don't remember what happened. They obviously admitted me to the new floor. They took my stats again and I think that was it for like the first hour or two. They really didn't run much tests on me or the baby. For a little bit, like they kind of just gave us some time to bond more with the baby and left us alone in our room, which was really nice. So the test they ran on him when we moved to maternity and recovery was his hearing test, his glucose test. They did a bilirubin test because he was looking a little bit yellow, they said. Not to the point where they thought he was definitely jaundice, but they just wanted to double check because he is so small. They wanted to make sure everything was okay. They did an ultrasound of his head because again, he's so small. They wanted to make sure that his brain and everything up there was okay. And thank God everything came back perfect. His APGAR test was good. Passed his hearing test. His glucose was perfect throughout the entire stay. So they were really happy about that. The bilirubin came back good. They did it twice again to be perfectly sure that he was okay and not jaundice. They did it twice and he passed both times. So he was just a perfect, happy little baby. When they weren't running the test, they literally left us alone. They were really, really big on bonding time with the parents. So, you know, I was holding him, my husband was holding him. I was breastfeeding and making sure that he was fed and that I was producing some milk for him. We stayed at the hospital a total of 2 days. We got there on Sunday at 2 p.m. and we left Tuesday morning like around 11 a.m. So yeah, the first night there went by really smooth. We didn't sleep, but you're so in love with this little baby that you don't even think about how tired you are or how like sore you are. It was just, you're so focused on this little baby. Oh. Hi, puppy.
You want to feel my hair?
Yeah. Okay, I am back. I had to feed the baby and we changed him and now the sun is setting. So for lips, I'm just going to do the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk lip liner, and gloss, I'm going to use the Urban Decay Ultra Cushion Lip Gloss in the shade Fuel. I love this lip combo. Alrighty, so this is the finished makeup look. Super quick and easy. I could probably get this done in like 10 minutes if I'm not talking about my birthing process. Okay, so let's wrap up this birth story. I honestly don't even remember where I left off. I think we talked about all his tests, my first pee. I didn't have to poop before I was able to go home. I thought that was a thing. Maybe they don't do it anymore, but in my head, I thought you have to pee and poop before you get discharged so that they know all your organs and all your systems are back to normal after birth, because it's a pretty traumatic and big thing for your body to go through, pushing a human out, and then all your organs are now kind of like floating about because there's no baby in there taking up room and your uterus is being contracted back. Which, another thing, contractions don't stop after you have your baby. Although they're not as bad, contractions are still happening after you give birth. I definitely felt contractions while I was breastfeeding the baby. Again, they're not as bad. It just feels like, well, it's your uterus contracting back to its normal size and settling back down in your pelvic area instead of floating like up by your boobs. So you do feel contractions. Again, they're not as bad. I would say they're like a 2-3 maybe after you give birth, but you still do have contractions for like the first, well, at least for me, the first few days. I think it didn't go past a week. For the baby, in order to get discharged and make sure everything was okay, he had to pass his sugar test. Obviously his hearing, his APGAR, and all like the routine tests he had to pass. But for him specifically, he had to pass his glucose test a few more times, bilirubin test to make sure he wasn't jaundiced, and he had to take his first poop. I think like, I'm not positive, but I think between 26 to 30 hours after he was born, he took his first poop, and it was just his meconium, which is just black. It just looks like tar coming out of him, which is normal. That was the poop that they built up when they're inside your belly. So he took his first poop, and we were just so relieved that at least that part was over, and it was fine. And so the first full day we had in the hospital with him, it was really nice and relaxing. I'm kind of glad we were in this like quarantine state where there was no visitors allowed. Although I would have loved for him to meet our family within like the first day, it did feel really nice, and I'm really grateful and thankful that we had that first 2 days just to ourselves. We had him to ourselves. We were able to bond and kind of settle into a new routine as a family instead of having like visitors come every hour and being shy about breastfeeding and letting other people hold him while he was still so new and little. So I'm really, really grateful that we were able to be in this quarantine bubble and just have some time with him to ourselves for the first like 2 to 3 days. Felt like that was really important for my mental health and my recovery, because I was just able to focus on him and not have to, you know, make sure that he's okay in someone else's arms, and that I had to ask someone to leave so I can feed him or have other people touch him and hold him. You know, it's just a new mom thing. So I was really, really happy that we were able to just spend a few days with the baby by ourselves. So yeah, the first full day went by really smooth. It was just honestly trying to catch up on sleep. At this point, I'm very sleep deprived because I haven't slept, and just, you know, your hormones are going crazy, and it was a rough day in the sleep department, but otherwise I felt so good. Again, I'll touch on it in my postpartum update and video, but I felt good otherwise. Like physically I felt good, mentally I felt good, and I was just in this blissful heavenly state with my new baby, and my husband is everything I've ever wanted, and it just felt really nice. So the first day went by, you know, we just took care of him basically. We ate, we made sure we took care of ourselves. We both showered in the hospital, and it did feel nice. I didn't wash my hair, so I'm glad I washed my hair the day I got admitted. So I showered, and it just felt really nice to be fresh again and to just get all the blood off of you and rinse down there properly. And then the next morning, we literally got discharged at like 11:30. We were very lucky that we had a very normal, quick, healthy labor and delivery, and was discharged on time, and we didn't have to stay any longer for any extra test, or, you know, God forbid something else happened. We were very, very lucky that he came out so perfect and so healthy. And so we drove home as a family, and we got to drive right to our new house. So it was pretty amazing. Like the first few days of his life, we have this brand new baby, and we're just moving into this brand new house. So it was a crazy, crazy few days. So that is it for my birth story, guys. I don't know if that was very exciting compared to other people's birth stories. So I hope you enjoyed the quick little makeup routine as well as listening to my birth story. If you have any questions about any of the makeup products that I use, or about my birthing experience that I did not touch on, or if you have any specific questions, let me know down in the comment section below. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. I am excited to come back and start filming again. I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.